Welcome to the Strong Bonds Fearless Marriage course. I'm Chaplain Craymer. Today we will be going through some of the coursework from the Fearless Marriage course that is sponsored by Strong Bonds. We'll be discussing three things. First, what makes us as individuals unique and how that affects how we view others versus how we should view others. Second, we'll discuss how to keep our expectations of self and others in check. This allows us to learn how to show compassion and kindness to others and ourselves while simultaneously keeping our internal stress down. And third, we will look at a few good communication skills that we can use to enhance our relationships with our spouse and others. As I sit here preparing and recording this presentation, I'm fully aware that there are several types of people watching. There are some of you who will be sitting alone. Perhaps you have been alone since the beginning of March, or perhaps you've been alone much longer. There are others who are sitting in a household of screaming children and a bitter spouse, and the world seems to be caving in on you. Yet there are others, some who are still so thrilled that you don't have to go out and socialize. Despite what group or groups you do fit into, all of us are very unique individuals who need to show ourselves and the others that we're around a little grace as we carry on through our lives, whether in isolation or in the crowded world. So let's first take a look at who we are. Who are you? Who is your spouse or significant other, your best friend, your coworker, or your boss? There are so many things that make us unique, and that also includes the culture with which we grew up in, the one that we live in now, our faith group, our faith background, our status in society, our family status, our desires, and our dreams. You can easily look at these and see how that makes you different than your nearest human. But what about the things that are wired into our make and model? Like, are you an introvert? Are you someone who gains energy from time alone? Or are you an extrovert who gains energy from being around people? Are you a thinker who goes by facts and observances, or a feeler, maybe, who goes by your own intuition? Are you a pessimist or an optimist or a realist? Do you think internally in pictures or in words and sentences? All of these things change your coding, making you unique, making you your own person. This means that your spouse, your coworker, your child, or your boss will be completely different than you, even if on the surface they look similar. There's a website that takes the traditional Myers-Briggs personality types, puts it into a fun little quiz that you can use to give you a clue as to what type of person you are compared to the others in your life. If you're interested in taking it, it's found at 16personalities.com. I'm an ISTJ personality type according to the Myers-Briggs test, and I have been since before the official test in seminary proved that I was. That means I'm introverted, I'm sensing, I'm thinking, and I'm judging. And that makes me a very boring person to the more extroverted sanguine types. But it also makes me highly responsible and very dependable. And each one of us has a part to play in this world. Our differences help offer things to society that would otherwise create great chasms. We need each other because we need those differences to exist. And it's the same way in a family and a marital environment. If both of us were the same, we wouldn't need the other. My husband is really good with the kids, and I'm really not. I'm really good at organizing things mentally and physically, and while he needs order in order to function, he's not as enabled to make that happen, so it works out perfectly that we're together. While these differences do help us make the world go round, they also seem to get in the way if we aren't willing to see the other person as important and unique. If we fail to see the other person as a valuable entity that we need to discover and instead think we are more important than they are, then we will make our lives and their lives miserable. So, you are unique and you are valuable. But also, your neighbor and your spouse and your coworker is unique and valuable. We can be super selfish creatures, can't we? Often we can't think beyond ourselves. It is vital, though, and especially within a marriage, to see that the other is just as important as we are. So things that you find out about yourself, you need to find out about your spouse. Who are they? Do they prefer to stay in or to go out in the evenings? Do they recharge by reading a good book or by hosting a party? Do they stick to the rules or bend them at every chance that they can get? Often we judge others by our own standards, but maybe there are other standards out there. Try seeing things from the other's perspective. In my studies of marriage through counseling married couples, reading materials in my own marriage of 12 years, I have come to believe that self-awareness is one of the biggest helps in marriage. Until I can successfully look inside to determine if my problem or desire is based on an actual need, one that my spouse or I can fix, and how we can fix it, I cannot successfully communicate that. And so not only am I aware of my own makeup, but I am aware of my own expectations, my own needs, and my own feelings. The reason that we have this ability to look inward, and for introverts it's a little bit easier to do than extroverts, is so that we can work together to become better with our surroundings and with our fellow humans. Before I got married, I always had this picture in my mind of waking up in the middle of the night and desiring a glass of water. I always thought, when I'm married, I sure hope I never ask my husband to get up and get that for me. When I got married in my early 30s, I kept that thought in my mind as a way to judge whether my expectations of my husband were growing too much. And I was talking with a young lady once who described how her expectations got way out of hand one day. She had been home as usual, taking care of her toddler, while her husband was at work. She had decided that he would find it pleasant to come home to a perfectly clean house for once. And so she poured her whole self into cleaning all day. By the time he came home, she was exhausted, but everything was clean. She then proceeded to say that as soon as he came home, she became very upset with him. Why? Because he not only didn't notice the clean house, but he hadn't brought her flowers to thank her. Now, do you think that he had any idea that she had cleaned all day? Had he had that idea that he should have brought her flowers, he probably would have. But all these expectations were in her head, and she hadn't voiced any of them. And not only that, she had started out with the intention of selflessly giving him the gift of a super clean house and ended up mentally building herself up to think that she had the right to be noticed and recognized. Expectations can kill a good relationship. My husband always says the key to a good marriage is low expectations, and I kind of think he's right. Where we hope that we both grow into better adults as we progress through this life, it does not help to expect others to act, especially if we have not voiced those expectations. First, let's look at what kinds of expectations there are. There's the reasonable expectations versus unreasonable expectations. There's conscious expectations versus unconscious expectations, and there's self-expectations versus the expectations that we think others should live by. A reasonable expectation would be that the gas tank will be filled up if it's on empty. But an unreasonable expectation would be that someone else would fill up my car if it's on empty. A conscious expectation would look like when you have decided that your kids will fill the dishwasher after dinner. But an unconscious expectation is having standards that you hold others by without realizing that that is not the universal knowledge. Self-expectations are when I expect myself to keep up my own hygiene or fitness, cleanliness, work, etc., while expectations for others to fulfill while expectations for others to fulfill are thinking they should do as I think they should do. That could be good or bad depending on the communication and agreement. If I expect my spouse to behave in a certain way or to do certain things, I must first expect that I act and behave in the same way toward them. Often, our expectations will clash with my spouse's expectations. This comes up in couples when they have to figure out child-rearing roles or finances, roles within a marriage. What happens is when these expectations are not openly discussed, they will become a wedge in the marriage relationship. This often is because either spouse doesn't see that the other is unique, with differences in thought and roles and backgrounds, or they are not conscious of differing expectations. Expectations must be discussed. No one can be a mind reader within a relationship, even if it seems like they're really good at it. So how do we communicate these expectations? First, it has to be done with the right intention. We must always approach communication within the marriage as a way to build up, not break down the other person in the relationship. We need to be aware that as we communicate, it's not just our words that are being communicated, but our faces and our body language can communicate just as strongly. In fact, what our faces and body language indicate is more indicative of what we truly feel. If our words don't match, and the other person will get the wrong message. So, if you're upset before diving into communication, calm yourself down. Start by taking a few really deep breaths. Try to look at this from the other person's perspective. Be aware of what you are feeling and why. It is important to think through something before communicating it, and this will help you to be articulate. It will help you to get to the point, and it will help you to present the expectation in a more calm fashion. Make sure your mind and your heart realizes that the other person is just as unique and valuable as you are. Approach communication with humility and forgiveness, not only toward the other person, but toward yourself as well. You should realize that both of you have faults, and probably within the same topic. And remember, both of you are human. You are both creatures that fail, both creatures that succeed, both creatures who are vulnerable and really need each other. And now that you've calmed down, if you needed to, you can proceed. When you communicate, you need to be very precise. What is the issue? How does it affect me? How does it affect you? What do I see as the resolution? What do you see as the resolution? And where do we go from here? It is important to remember, while you are communicating, that you use words such as, I feel like, or it seems like from my perspective, and not pointing your figurative finger at the other person, which could cause defensiveness. This is not a blame game, and it could easily turn into an argument. It's also important that you don't take the stage as the speaker for more time than it would take to articulately describe the problem, because you don't want to lose your listener. As the listener, you will want to make sure that you are hearing the other person's perspective. Perhaps they aren't able to precisely articulate the way they are feeling. So watch what they are saying, listen to it, think through what they might be trying to say, and then paraphrase back in words that are yours what you hear the person saying. This will give the initiator a chance to describe it differently if needed, or to feel like you've heard them out. And try not to interrupt as the listener. The initiator is taking great emotional effort to talk this subject over. Let them talk it through. Lastly, help the initiator find a solution that will benefit both parties. As our communication with one another is vital to the health of our relationships. So if we begin to get comfortable with this idea and we practice it, we will see relationships heal and grow. With that being said, keep in mind that your expectations of yourself and your relationships should be grounded, spoken, and realistic. And your understanding of who you are and who your spouse is can drastically change how well you communicate and react to each other. Let me leave you with this. Everything that we have talked about is important, but there is something much more important that you have to base all of this on. If you are floundering about what you believe, if you feel like there is nothing higher than yourself that you believe in, none of this is going to work. Let me encourage you to look for truth. Look for belief in something that is steady and does not falter. Once you begin to do this, finding that foundation on which to stand will help you discover who you are, to see your strengths and weaknesses, and be forgiving of both yourself and others. If you have that foundation, when your spouse lets you down, which they ultimately will, it will not shatter your world completely. And together, you can stand beside each other, helping each other through the hardest times in life. Marriage is not an institution to fulfill our wildest dreams of feeling loved. It is our partnership with each other that helps you walk with your spouse through good and bad times. It is a way that we can come together laughing, pulling each other up, and being there for each other in the hardest times and in the best times. Don't think that marriage is there to fulfill our own selves, but to fulfill each other. I hope that you were able to stick with me through this video. And if you find that you have any questions, all of us in the chapel office would love to talk with you further. Please know that as we continue to live through current events, your chapel team is praying for you. If you have need of further support, please do not hesitate to give us a call. Have a great day.